Thank you for tuning into our generosity series called If I Were a Rich Man. Generosity is not primarily something that we do, but is an expression of who we are, and it begins long before we give. And so we get to give as a response to faith, not as a requirement of faith, and we really hope that you enjoy this message.
Today I want to talk about, or the title of my message is, Let's Talk Talents. Let's talk talents. Matthew 25, the NKJV, or the New King James Version, calls it the parable of the talents. If you read it in the NIV, they call it the parable of the bags of gold. And so, yes, there's many kind of suggestions to talents being more than just money in our lives. But I want to tell you this parable was about money primarily. I just want to help. Otherwise, we can try and disarm the nature of what it was to try and make it make sense for what we actually don't want to talk about. This parable was about money, friends. Let's talk talents. I want to teach you today about the art of progressive stewardship. That's what I call it, the art of progressive stewardship. Matthew 5, verses 14 to 30 goes like this. For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country, who called his servants and delivered goods to them, and to each one he gave, or to one he gave 5, to one he gave 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. And immediately he went on a journey, and then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5. And likewise he had received 2, gained 2 more. But he who had received 1 dug it in the ground and hid the Lord's money. After a long time the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And so he had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I've gained 5 more besides them. The Lord said to him, well done, my good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few. I want you to see how Jesus calls 5, 2, and 1 all a few, because compared to the barn of heaven, it's just a little bit that he's entrusted to you and I. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of the Lord. Verse 22. He also who had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, you delivered me 2 talents. Look, I've gained 2 more talents beside them. His Lord said to them, well done, my good and faithful servants. You have been faithful over a few. I will make you ruler over many. Enter into the joy of the Lord. Verse 24. Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown, gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid, and I went and hid your talents in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours, 1 talent back. But the Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have at least received back with some interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10. This is not a bedtime story. For everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But for him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. God help us understand this parable today, because he's talking about money, but what he's trying to do is give us a different mindset. Let me tell you why. You see, Matthew is a book of the writer trying to establish for us the idea that there is a king and a kingdom. That's Matthew's goal. Every time he writes, he's trying to establish that what Jesus came to do was establish a new rule and reign. He wanted to be the king. You see, the earth had been full of earthly kings that had been kind of letting the people down for a long time. And so Jesus was coming to establish a kingdom, a heaven kingdom here on earth. And he's wanting to help us see that what he's doing is good for us. Other kings have let us down, but this king has good things for his people. That's the mindset by which the book of Matthew is written. Which is why in the beginning of Matthew we read what I read to you this morning. Blessed are, this is what someone once said, the constitution of heaven, not the suggestion for behavior on earth. In other words, you're not ranked by how you do to blessed are and then the whole thing that comes. You're not ranked according to that. That's just how heaven operates, all right? So don't put yourself under a whip and think, I'm really doing badly today. That's just Jesus establishing, this is how the system flows. This is how it works where I come from. Because he's establishing for us, Matthew 5, the kingdom of heaven, the constitution of heaven. From Matthew 5, he goes on, it's one of the sermons that everyone preaches about called the Sermon on the Mount, but he goes on to teach them how to pray. It's where the Lord's Prayer is recorded. I want to teach you a little bit about the context with which we read the parable. Otherwise, it's just a cool story. But I want to give you the story in its context. And the context is a king establishing a kingdom. We are the kids, the children, the inheritance of the kingdom. So Jesus goes from Matthew 5 into Matthew 6 into Matthew 7, and he leads us into this idea of the Lord's Prayer. It's where it's recorded in its fullness. Why is it in Matthew? Because it's all about kingdom. It's all about God establishing on earth what we wish we could have, which is from heaven. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. All right, God, this is all about you. Your kingdom come. It's right up front because it's wanting to establish the goal of prayer, or the pursuit of prayer is that what He has becomes our portion. The pursuit of prayer is not that we would kind of go, hey, God, I need this, fix that. God, I need that. Look, He's okay with that, but that's almost like just conversational for Him. He wants you to believe that everything that is in heaven will become ours here. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. It's saying, release the burden that we carry. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. God, there's a whole lot of barriers, but the goal, God, is please get heaven down to earth. I remember reading it when I was kind of a new believer, or a new Christian, if you like to call it that. And I remember writing down in my journal, this system sucks. Like I'm just being honest. Like I was reading about God's kingdom coming down to earth, and I was thinking about what we have here, and I'm thinking like, this system sucks. Like His one seems so good and so pleasing and so big and so powerful. Honestly, the one I live in is average, actually. God, the attempts I've made are producing small results. I'm done with this system. Let your kingdom come here on earth. That's the heart with which we pray. It's not a religious ritual. It is a relational transfer of trust. Our Father who art in heaven is not I know you said it at school, and kudos to the school for keeping something important at the beginning of the assembly. But what we fail to bring to people is the idea that this is not a religious ritual. You don't have to say it. It is a relational transfer of trust. It's God saying, I want what you have done here. Thanks for making that possible. And so Jesus is trying to establish for His people that what He has now become ours. Let that sink in. Tap your neighbor and say, it's for you too. You see, we spend most of our lives trying to decide whether we've been a Christian for a long time, whether we're still figuring it out, or whether we are new to this journey. Most of our life is spent trying to figure out what we've done wrong so that we can have what we actually want. Isn't that the truth? God, where did I fail? Where did I fall? What am I doing wrong and that I can't have X? But that's not how the kingdom of heaven works. Jesus was trying to establish in His people what He had done right. He was trying to establish in them, it's not about what you do for me, it's about what I've done for you. This is why He spoke in parables. It's why He told stories. Otherwise, He would have just quoted principles, do this and get that. But He told parables. Why? Because He wanted the Holy Spirit to get into our hearts and illuminate in each of us as individuals. By the way, you will hear today what you need to hear by the power of God, not what I have to say. I'll say a whole lot of things, but God will help you hear what you need to hear. That's why He spoke in parables. He would tell a story and the Spirit would come upon them and it would speak to them. He wanted them to see it for themselves. He wanted them to make sense of the parable without giving them the principle, because that was a mindset thing. You see, if we just quote principles, do this and get that, we never change our mindset. What are you trying to say here, God? Where are you leading us, God? Why is this actually important, God? Why do I have a business? Why do I have one child, no child, 4 children? What is this all about, God? I believe God would tell stories to help us. And so He was telling a story to help them with the art of progressive stewardship. If the king has everything and in the kingdom there is excess, how is it that we access it? Well, it's like a man from a far country. It's the story of God Himself coming to His servants. It's interesting, He calls them servants just to give them context. The Bible actually calls us sons, but they wouldn't have understood that just then, so He calls them servants. He tries to relate to them on their level. So it's like a man from a far country. He comes and gives His servants a few different options, 1, 2, and 5, and He gives them the empowerment and the tools and the ability to go and do something with them. 1 comes back, 5 became 10, 2 became 4, 1 stayed 1, took the 1, gave it to the 10. Everybody understand what's going on? What? It's a parable. It's not a principle. And there are some thoughts within this story that if you let them impact your life, will transform it into the excess and abundance that God has for you, rather than the little that we seem to live in. So I got a couple of thoughts. They're not principles, they're just thoughts from this story that I believe will bless you today. You ready for it? The art of progressive stewardship. Let's talk talents. The first thought is this: gifts. The first thing I see in this story is gifts. They are given to the servants. Servants don't earn them. Servants don't approach him and be like, hey, what we worth? They were just given to the servants. They were entrusted to the servants. Can I say, God has entrusted to you some part of a talent. All right? I don't know whether it's 1 or 2 or a 5, but here's what I want to say. There's more where that came from. When I read the story, I realize when it comes to talents, what Jesus was trying to teach us is there's more where that came from. I don't know what the 1 did to get a 1. I don't know what the 2 did to get a 2. And I don't know what the 5 did to get a 5. But clearly there was something going on there that was different. They got different kind of allocations. But the beauty of the story is not what each one got. It was that there was more where it came from. You know, we always read the story and we get stuck on verse number 1. I can't believe I can't believe, their house and my car and I didn't get picked. And, I can't, we get stuck within the first few verses. You got to read the end of the story. There is abundance. He took 5, gave more he gave the 5 back to the guy. He said, hey, listen, let's put the 10 aside. There is so much more going on. Welcome in. Come and look after my estate with me. Like it's a whole nother deal. I want you to see that there's more where that came from. I'm told that 1 talent is plus minus 20 years of a day labor's wage. 20 years. He approaches ordinary people with 20 years of wages. To one he gave 20, to one he gave 100 years, and to one he gave 40 years worth of wage. Friends, can I just tell you what I read in the story? There is excess. It's not about who got what. It's about there's more where that came from. I love it how both 2 and 5 worked the talents. They had a barn mindset. They worked the talents. And yet they were entrusted with even more. I want to help someone here today. What you got is not what you're worth. What you got is not what you're worth. Because some got 1 in this room, some got 2 in this room, and some got 5 in this room. Some are sitting on 10, others on 4, others still don't have 1. I want to tell you, friends, what you got is not what you're worth. It's what's been entrusted to you, but it's not what you're worth. You're worth more than the riches of this world. You're worth everything God positioned himself to do on earth through his son, Jesus. You're worth more than you think. You're not worth the money you hold in your hands. Friends, that is not how we tell our worth. So what you hold or what counts as your wealth is not what you're worth. I was sitting with a man who's done very well, has left a great inheritance for his children. When I say great, you probably couldn't count how big it was. And some of you, maybe, I couldn't. I was like, that's huge, It's in numbers that I can't even think about. And I said to him, you do know, sir, that money is the lowest form of inheritance. He smiled. He said, yeah, I got that a long time ago. That's why I don't really care what's in the bank. It's interesting how people that live with much don't really care what's in the bank. Because that's not their worth. What you got is not your worth. It's just been entrusted to you by God. I said to him, so if you have this much, what's the point? Like, what drives you? What gets you up every morning? I asked him. I'm intrigued by men who are in there. He's 70 years old. He was telling me a story. He said he went to the local gym. He was training on the spinning bike. He said he was going so fast, he thought he was going to ride it out the gym. 70 years old. He's got fire in his bones. I said, what gets you up every morning? What keeps you doing this thing for God? He's passionate. He said, I want to see young businessmen flourish. I want to see our country changed. He's sitting in a room of politicians weekly trying to help them make good business decisions for the future of our nation. He said, look, it's not all roses, but I'm telling you, I'm born to help this happen. I want to see my children go further than I went. I want to see churches thrive. This is what he's telling me. I just said, what gets you up in the morning? He's telling me everything. And then he says to me, looks at me, he goes, listen here, Dill, I want to go to the grave empty. Because what you got is not what you're worth. It's just what's been entrusted. It's just what's been entrusted. And guess what? There's more where that came from. Friends, I don't hold the key to the barn. God does. So I'm going to give it all. There's seasons I feel like I'm 2. There's seasons I feel like I'm 5. There are other seasons I feel like I'm 1. But I don't want to get caught up in what I got because I am not worth what I got. It's just what's been entrusted. How many of you know God is your source today? The second thing I see in the story is expectations. Write this down. You got to build on your blessings. You got to build on your blessings. Expectations. What I love about the story is there was different allocation Same expectation. Did you see that? Different allocation. I'm going to give a 1, a 2, and a 5, but I expect the same thing, double it. You know, you're very quiet this morning, church. I'm going to keep talking. It's all right. I think God is moving. We spend a lot of our lives ranking each other. How they're doing, where am I going, what car they're driving, what house they're in, how they're feeling, where's their business at. There's a lot of ranking going. Hey, listen, this is the cool thing about the parable story. Jesus was trying to give them a mindset, all right? There's going to be different allocations. People are going to have different amounts to you. It's not about the allocation. It's about the expectation. Double what you got. Work what you got. Same expectations. 2 became 4, 5 became 10. Same return. So don't worry how big somebody else's portion is. Work yours. It's not what you have. I tell my girls all the time because listen, like as a pastor, I would love to say that my home is like a perfect home. And like my girls quote Bible stories and they get the parable and they give away all this stuff. But honestly, like at 3 years old, I'm still struggling to get them to give away like 1 teddy or 4,000. Like the principal is still taking its time to buy into. They're hanging on to everything I have. I said to them, girls, it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. It's not what you have, girls. It's not how many houses you own. It's not how many cars you got. It's not how much wealth you made. It's what you do with what you have. The expectation is the same, although the allocation is different. Build on yours. Don't be envious and jealous of somebody else. See, this is progressive stewardship. The word steward is often a word used to describe this story. The principle of the talents obviously often taught as a way of stewardship. Do you know that a steward, the word for steward is to build up, not to take care of? Anyone ever been told to steward something is to take care of what's been given to you? All right, I want to ramp it up a notch. It's not to take care of, it's to build it up. Because to take care of is what the one did when I read the story. He took care of it. He put it in the ground. But that's not stewardship. That's scared. I know it's Belito and the sun rises over the sea and the palm trees are growing on the hills. But friends, there is a kingdom that wants to come to our lives. Progressive stewardship is to take what I have and to build it up. To build on my blessing. To make more of it and to make more of it for Him. The word is he went and traded it. The Bible says in verse 16 that he who had received the 5 went and traded with them. Trading is buying and selling. It's working your wealth. It's not sitting in it and hoping that it's going to produce something. That's to be scared. But to be a steward is to build it up. Is to speak to men and women that have gone before. Get wisdom on how to build wealth. Not to do it my way. It's not working. I want wisdom. I want to build it up. I want to take it further. I want to see more come into my life. I want to steward this thing well. I don't want my family. You know when God first said to Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply, it's the first command they were given. And it was a command of multiplication. And it was a command of stewardship. I want you to build up what's now just 2. So when we raise children, friends, we're not trying to get them to finish matric and get a job and buy a house. We're trying to steward them to go further than we ever dreamt of. We're trying to build them up. Brian Houston always says, may our floor or our ceiling be their floor. Stewardship. And so your wealth, sir, is a blessing that's been given to you. Your responsibility is to build it. Build it. We were looking for a venue in Umhlanga. We came across an interesting guy who owns a big building, a really prominent building in Umhlanga. And we were chatting to him, and the building was only built on half of what the land was able to be used for. And so we said to him, would you sell this? In other words, are you wanting to develop it yourself, or you want to sell this? Would you sell it? Like, I mean, here we were, like little church in Belito, like discussing and buying a 150 million rand building. I mean, what is our thinking? But luckily I don't own the key to the barn. Jesus does. He'll open it when he wants to. But anyway, so I'm saying to this guy, I'm like, would you be interested in selling the building? And I could see he looked at me and he kind of like thought about it for a second or two, and he kind of knows who we are as a church, and he saw I was a young man. But he got over his kind of thought process as to where I sat in the financial world, and he said to me, yes, I would. I said, how much would you want for it? He said, well, you got to decide what you're willing to pay. I said, at what point will the price become right? He says, when I decide. I was learning business. I'm still new to this whole thing. I'm thinking like, man, I should have offered him 20 and seen what he said. He says, when I decide. I said, what happens if I give you an offer you can't resist? Will you hold on to the building if I gave it to you today? I was pushing him a bit. I said, if I gave you all the money you wanted right now today, would you sell the building? I thought that, he's going to hold on to what he feels like he's built in his life. He said, yes. So he said, let me help you understand something, Dylan. I'm a trader. I said, what does that mean? He said, I buy and sell. I don't hold. I said, could you help me with that? He said, so many people spend their whole life trying to buy something that they're then going to hold on to, but we're not born to buy, to hold on. We're born to sell, buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell. We are traders. We are traders. Our lives are moving. There is a stewardship. God, I've saved up my whole life to build and buy this house. Now the house is worth double what I started with, but it's our house. It's our family home. It's special to us. Guess what? Sell the house. Put the money in the bank. Build a new one. There is a progressive, sorry if I just changed the game plan for a marriage in the room over here, disagreement between husband and wife. We'll counsel you another time. But I want to tell you, friends, there is something about sentiment that holds us back. It makes us scared. It makes us scared. God, I've worked so hard. I got the one. I went and hid it in the ground. I didn't want to give you back something. And meanwhile, the 5 is going, it's not mine to begin with. I've made 4, and then I made 10, and then it doesn't actually matter. And he just looked at me and said, you buy the building tomorrow. I don't care about this building. I'm a trader. Tap your neighbor, say, I'm a trader. Wives are like, can we just not trade now? The headache to get us to this moment is not worth. I think I'm having a bit of fun as I speak about this, but Jesus was trying to help them with mindsets. See, for Jesus, 1, 2, and 5 was all few. That's what he said. So the point isn't how much you got. The point is, what are you doing with it? Build on your blessings. When it says he hid it in the ground, the word is he sat on it. I just don't like that picture. God has given us. Say, friends, listen, I know you've worked hard, but God has released the finance. Are you sitting on it? I want to steward it. I want to build it up. I don't want to sit on this Linc church. God gave us this church. Faithful hands put finance forward and we built the building. But God turned the key. It's his bond. I don't want to sit on this church. We're going to Mshlanga not because we want to get a second Linc brand out there, but because there is an abundance that is flowing in this house that deserves to bless the city. I want to sit on it. Tess and I, whenever we come back from holiday, I'm not sure if it's a problem or progressive stewardship, but when we get back from holiday, we purge, like every time. Like you can be sure if you're ever in need of stuff and just come stand by. Like honestly, everything gets given, in that season. But we come back and we just purge. We give away our clothes, we give away appliances, we give away toys. We literally just purge, and then we go, now what are we going to do? Because we're not sentimental, we're stewards, and there are seasons to hold and there are seasons to hand over. But there's something about stewardship that is progressive. I just want to ask you the simple question: are you sitting in it or are you stewarding it? I think the modern day word for hiding is hoarding. Sorry, I'll talk about that another time. You got extra cars, you got extra houses, you got extra clothing, you got extra skills, you got extra machinery, you got extra money. Are you sitting in it or are you stewarding it? I just want to ask the question. The third thing I see in this story, I love Jesus. He just told a story. He said, you make sense of it. I love him. He's not a judgmental teacher. He's a personal savior and friend. Kingdom of heaven, which is what I'm trying to establish here in Linc Church and in Durban and in South Africa. Kingdom of heaven is like a man from a faraway country talking about himself, came and entrusted to a few people that didn't deserve a few talents. He gave it to them. And he told them that there's more where that came from. But he also said, regardless of the allocation, the expectation is that you do something with it. But the third thing I read in this story, and I love this, I think you should, if you don't write down anything else, write this down. Favor. Favor. There's gifting, there is expectation, and there's favor. And I wrote this down because I like this language. A win for the king is a win for his kids. A win for the king is a win for his kids. What I love about the story is that they bring back the money to him. He entrusts to them different allocations, asks the same expectation, and when the story comes to an end, and it's just a story, it's just a parable, you can make sense of it, but in the story, they bring it back to him, and he says, well done, good and faithful, and he takes the 10 and he invites them into much more. I wonder if there is a thought in this that favor follows the faithful. They went after it for their master. You know, one of the things that set me free, I was talking to a friend recently. He said, Dill, how do you see money? I said, I don't really. He said, what do you mean by that? I said, I just don't look at it often. He said, I don't understand. He said, I said, it's distracting, so I don't look at it. I'm a steward and a resource, and we have budgets for the church, and I have budgets for my family. I'm an accountant for my sins. I love to talk numbers, but I just don't look at it often. It's distracting. I want to work the wealth I have. I get caught up in protecting it. I want to work it, I want to work it, I want to work it, because favor follows the faithful. They were going after it for their master, and their reward was great wealth. You see, when I bring my wins to him, he rewards me with more in my business, in my finance, in my success. I just want to ask the question, when your business flourishes, where do you bring it? When your family is experiencing blessing, where do you take that? Is that an accolade? Is that a book that you write about the life I built? Or is it a faithful response to the goodness of God? He started this, he's my source, I stewarded it, now he's doubling it up, not because of anything I've done, but because of the grace that flows freely in me. A win for the king is a win for the kids. What Jesus was trying to establish with them in the parable of the talents is there is a kingdom, and the kingdom is wealthy, and it is abundance, and there's a barn, and there's a storehouse, and there's excess. And then there are a few people that kind of have been invited into the kingdom. For the sake of the story, we'll call them servants. Now they're called sons. They are inheritance. They deserve inheritance as sons. They are heirs to the throne. That's you and I, friends, Linc Church, and anyone else who steps into faith of Jesus. And I've entrusted to them small amounts, 5, 2, 1. Call it what you want. It's small for me. But when they double it, when they steward it, when they are faithful with what I've given them, I don't give them back what they earned. I take that away. It's a small amount. And I invite them into what I earned for them, inheritance. I like the idea that the amount of money I've built in my life is small compared to what God is going to give me in his kingdom. I like that. Mine, look, your pile might be big, mine's small. I like the fact that it's not mine. It doesn't hold me. I wrote this down when I was reading the story. The parable of the talents is not a test of our competency. It's training for our calling. It's not trying to test, can you do something with what I've given you? It's training, work it, learn it, get advice, seek wisdom, come to church, be filled with the presence of God, apply yourself, go back, work it again, fail at business, start a new one, try a different thing, come to a new friend, work it. It's training for our calling, because when the 5 become, by the way, it says when the master, after a long time, the master came back. We read the story and we think, okay, I've got to take it now and I've got to do it tomorrow. No, it's going to take time, friends. You got to work it, and you got to try again. You got to come at it from a different angle. You got to try again. You got to come at it from a different angle. Try again. It's training for our calling, which is to manage the inheritance of heaven. I bring my wins to him, and he rewards me with more. Last story, and then I'll close. Go and read the story, Matthew 25. Please don't let me tell you all the Bible stories. They're too good to miss out on. Go and read them. Eugene Peterson wrote the Message Bible. Some of you have read the translation. Some of you love the translation. We use it often to preach. And it took him 20 years to write the Message Translation Bible. 20 years. Now, I know you wanted to double your wealth overnight. It took him 20 years just to write a Bible. But listen to the story he tells about it. So he's being interviewed in a big conference. And they're intrigued by his ability to produce books. And so they say to him, Eugene, you've written 64 books in your life. How have you done it, sir? He said, I believe it's 63. They're like, no, we've checked. 64 books recorded to Eugene Peterson. 64 books. How have you done it? He said, it's definitely 63. I know where you're going wrong. I said, tell us. He said, I think you're talking about the message. The deal with the message, it was never my book. 20 years to write what he would consider was never his. What's your book? 20 years to build that business. 20 years, hard work, diligent work, waking up every morning, coming to bed late, getting home late, serving the family, getting up, waking up, serving. 20 years. I wonder if we have the humility of Eugene Peterson to realize a win for the king is a win for the kids. I'm not winning for the kids. I'm winning for the king. He decides what to do with the kids. And Eugene Peterson said, 20 years spent on a book. It's not my book. It's his. It's his book. Stand with me this morning, church.